Hi, listeners. Welcome to Bridging the Gap. I'm one of your hosts, Cooper Green, and today's podcast, we are doing it with Dr. Nicole Detling for the third time. This time around, we'll be discussing how Nicole's been going to all of our centers. She's been talking about mental resilience and mental performance in their centers and helping our staff be able to give excellent treatment to our clients throughout the state. So we'll be talking about that. And as well as we will be getting a parent's perspective from Dr. Nicole Detling as well. She has had experience in the world of autism and ABA. So we'll go ahead and delve into that today. I guess you can go ahead and introduce yourself, even though you've already been on this podcast 3 times now.
Yeah, no. Hi, everybody. Dr. Nicole Detling here. Good to see you again. Really looking forward to going to the centers that I haven't been to yet. I've already done 4 town halls so far. And so already, 4 to go.
I thought you've only done like 2.
Oh, really? Yeah, no, I've done 4. So I've already been to Cedar City, St. George, Crossroads, and Silver Creek. And then that's it for February. And then next month, we'll be hitting the other centers.
Yeah. I guess you want to get into how all this started, and maybe for our listeners that are listening, do you want to talk about why you're even here, for why your coaching and the mental performance is necessary for like our staff and our clients, even that's in the world of like behavioral healthcare and the treatment, like why is that even relevant?
Yeah, great question. Well, the main reason I'm here is because Natalie cares about all of you guys. Yeah. And I met Natalie through Bella. So Bella, as you all know, played softball at the University of Utah. And I was the mental performance coach with the team when she played. And so she and I have known each other for several years now. And when Natalie was looking for someone to just help all of you thrive. So it kind of started in the way Natalie explains all of this at each town hall, which is beautiful. And the short version of it is, Natalie really took care of everyone during COVID. She was worried about people's mental health and making sure everybody was okay and doing all the self-care stuff. And we had the self-care summit this last May. And part of what came from that was her recognizing, okay, right, we have all these resources now to help people take better care of themselves mentally, physically, financially, emotionally, all the things. We want to now help people thrive. How do we help people learn to thrive and live optimally? And so that's where I came into play. And so Natalie and I sat down together and said, okay, what could a program look like for a business as big as this one with all these different centers? What could it look like? What could exist within it? What's the main purpose of this? And part of what I present in those town halls is, why does mental performance coaching matter to you? So I start with kind of what it is, but then why does it matter to you? Because my background is mostly in the sports world and elite level athletes. And so how in the world does that make sense to bring to you, TBS? And so really what it does, 3 primary purposes are to improve your self-awareness, to improve your performance, and then you ultimately enjoy your work more. And at the end of the day, what all of that does is just help you figure out how to do life a little bit better. Mental performance coaching exists on the continuum of mental health, on the side of thriving and living optimally, not just getting by, right? Mental health services typically exist to help people get back to normal, just functioning normally, whatever normal is to you, right? And then mental performance is like, okay, we're there. We have good days and bad days. We're still going to struggle and go through adversity. We're still going to have some good days and life is going to be great. But how can we live life more optimally and thrive? And so that's really what this program is about, is teaching those mental performances, skills, principles, giving resources to help all of you figure out how you can thrive and live optimally.
Yeah, I remember from the previous episodes that we did, you mentioned that you worked with like the cybersecurity company, you worked with the federal government.
Yeah.
And yeah, even before doing this episode, I was really curious what your answer would be, because yeah, just like you said, I'm sure people would be wondering, why the heck are you even here?
Yeah. And part of what I say in the town halls too is that we all perform. not just athletes. Every single one of us performs every single day. We perform at our jobs. We perform in our homes. We perform driving to work, which in Utah is a heck of a performance sometimes, right? Like we all, as human beings, we perform. And so it doesn't matter if that performance is in front of millions of people for millions of dollars, or if it's in a room with one kid, performing with that kid and helping that kid figure a few things out. It's still a performance. And your mindset is going to impact that performance, which is really where the strategies that I'm teaching are really about mindset, all around the right mindset to have when you're in those situations it's going to help you ultimately perform better, enhance job satisfaction, live life better. That's what it's all about.
That makes sense. Is there something that you notice difference in the behavioral healthcare world compared to like the cybersecurity or the federal government or?
Yeah. Well, I'll start with one big similarity because that becomes important in the work that I'm doing. And that similarity is that we're all humans and we're all out there just trying to live our best and figure it out and handle the adversities that come our way. And it does, irrespective of work, what you do, what your performance is. Like that's what's similar between all of us. And so that's why these principles are going to work for people regardless of what it is they do. Because at the end of the day, we're all people. Now, what you do is a little bit different. At UTBS, I think what makes it very unique and what's special, especially compared to cybersecurity or the federal government, is why you do what you do. This is not an easy job. Not that any job is easy. I don't want to say that any other job is easy, but it's one thing to sit behind a computer screen and code different, languages and programs and which can be very challenging, but it's very different when you have someone in front of you whose brain functions a little differently and you're trying to figure that out and you don't know what to expect. And you're helping humans, and being in a service industry, I think can be incredibly challenging. And so I believe there's something really special about people who choose to take a job like this, which is a superpower in a lot of ways, because we need people like this out there. So I would say, people here just have bigger, warmer hearts and just want to make a difference in different ways than the other industries that I've worked in.
Well, if the 4 town halls you've been to now, is there anything you would like to share that like questions that staff have asked or experiences or even struggles they're having? Is there anything that you can share with us?
Sure. Yeah, it's been interesting. The ones what I will say is the 4 I've been to have been phenomenal. I've loved the energy of the people in the room. It's been so helpful for me as a speaker. If I'm standing up there for 2 hours and I'm not getting anything from anyone, oh my gosh, trust me, it's just as painful for the speakers, the audience. But that's not what I've had. I've had great engagement. People are making eye contact. They're asking great questions. They're really engaged with the material, which is really amazing. It helps it go better for me, for sure. But hopefully it also means that they're taking away some information. What's interesting has been, so at the end, I ask people to tell me, what do you want to learn about going forward? What's something that's on your mind, that's on your heart? Because I want to personalize for each center as we go into subsequent quarters. And so I want to hear from each center, what's something you want to learn about? And what's interesting is a very consistent theme that's come up across all 4 centers has been burnout. So that's probably going to be a big topic coming up in Q2. Not to say that the next 4 will be that. And I haven't actually looked at the data yet to see if that was the number one most answered question or most answered item for each center was burnout. Last night, for sure, it was like every single person was putting burnout on there. And so I don't know if that's actually the same for the other 3, but that topic continues to come up. So that's probably something we'll talk about in the future.
Can you maybe dive into why there's burnout every center?
The research is pretty clear that service industry professionals tend to burn out faster because it is so emotionally taxing. It's emotionally engaging, and that can be really, really hard if you don't have the right tools and strategies. But that caveat, having those right tools and strategies can be really helpful for that. Just from my own observation, another thing I would say is that you're not just service industry professionals with a difficult population sometimes, but Also the age, if we look at the average age of most people that I've been talking to, it's like college age people who also have school and those other stressors in their lives that can also contribute to those feelings of burnout or feeling that that's where you're headed. So it kind of makes sense to me. And I'm looking forward to giving people some strategies for how to manage that.
Is there any hot topics that you guys have discussed? I know you said there was burnout and stuff, but maybe is there any strategies that you shared with the staff in your last 4 town halls that you'd like to share on here?
Yeah.
Because from what I've heard, there, like you've talked about like the red, yellow, and green thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And is that something you would like to share on here as well?
I certainly can. Okay. So part of the way we did this was initially we'd asked for people to email me in advance so I could individualize those sessions for each center. I didn't get a single email. However, I believe the reason for that is people didn't know what to ask for. They didn't really know what mental performance was or what I do. And so they weren't really sure.
And this is like the first time like staff have been seeing you, right?
Exactly. So I think that we may have mishandled that at the beginning a little bit. It sounded good at the beginning, but maybe it didn't quite go the way we wanted. So I'm doing the same thing for each center for this first quarter. And one of the reasons I chose the topic I did was I did speak with some different people here and just said, what do you think is going to be most relevant? And I really spent a lot of time with Bella. Bella was super helpful for me on this because she knows very well what I do, right? Yeah. And so she was a great person for me to go to and say, what do you think is going to be most powerful for them? What do you think they need to hear? And I went to her with like 3 different ideas and she was all about self-talk. She's like, that's the one. That'd be a great place to start. And so this first session for all the centers has really been about your self-talk and the stories that you tell yourself. And so the way I like to explain it is there's actually 3 different types of self-talk. Everyone knows and thinks about positive and negative, but there's also a neutral self-talk. And this actually comes from something that I kind of figured out, the red light, yellow light, green light. I compare that analogy of a traffic light to the thoughts, which is something I figured out worked with my kid who's autistic. And so I was able to kind of talk with him about his thoughts and being able to put them in those terms, red light, yellow light, green light, or red thought, yellow thought, green thought, was really beneficial for him. And since then, I've used it with so many athletes over the years that it's just worked really well. So I continue to do that. So basically the way I promote that is that a green light or a green thought is your positive self-talk. A red light, red thought, negative self-talk. And a yellow light, yellow thought is neutral self-talk. And just a quick snippet, and this becomes really important, is most people believe that it's the words you use that makes it negative or positive, but that's not actually true. It's how it makes you feel. So I don't care what you say to yourself. I don't care the words you use. If it makes you feel good and you're motivated and you're doing the thing that you're out there to do, or it gets you going in some way, that's a green light. That's positive self-talk. If it makes you feel bad, if it brings you down, if you get into a bad negative headspace, that's negative self-talk. No, I don't care the words you use. So even if you're saying like, oh, I'm awesome, and you're being facetious and you're not believing that and you know it and it makes you feel kind of crappy, I don't care that you said I'm awesome. If it makes you feel bad, that's negative self-talk for you in that moment.
Sounds like it's all about context. And how
it is totally about context, 100%. And then neutral self-talk, or that yellow self-talk, is non-emotion focused. So I could just say, here's a piece of paper, and that doesn't make me feel good or bad. It just is. So that would be neutral self-talk, just neutral thought.
Yeah. Well, with all that said, what do you see the future out of all this for like coaching all the staff here? What do you see that as in the future, even for like UTBS providing ABA in like all of Utah? Where do you see all of that?
Yeah. What I'm really hoping for is that people will take something, just one thing from each session. If you can take one thing from each session, start to utilize that to help you live your life a little bit better, enjoy your job a little bit better, improve your performance at your job, or just improve your performance in life. That's a win. Because I also know, and I've seen this time and time again, it's undeniable that when I can help someone just figure out how to do it a little bit better, that energy and that impact spreads, and they start to spread that. And so gosh, in just a tiny little way, if we can just make even just the little corner of our world a little bit better, then that's what it's all about. So I'm really hoping that people will get just one thing from each session that they'll start using, and it'll just improve their performance and ultimately their lives.
Yeah. Well, I would like to shift gears you just mentioned something about your son who had autism. Let's dive into that. Can you maybe tell, I guess, how did it even all start, and talk about your experience as a mother, even with, diagnosis and all that?
Yeah. So normally I have an open book about everything, but I am going to hold some stuff back for his privacy and for his sake. So I don't just want to blast his information out to everyone. But so he was diagnosed a little later in life. So he was 8 when he was diagnosed, and our family had been through some really difficult things, and he had been showing some signs and behaviors of mental trauma through those things, which made sense. And I took him in to see a therapist, and it was through that process that he was diagnosed with autism. And when he got the diagnosis, things started to make sense. It would have been Asperger's. He would have been diagnosed with Asperger's, but as we all know now, that's just on the autism spectrum. So he's very high functioning, which is why I didn't really notice anything previous. I thought maybe he's a little quirky, but what kid isn't quirky? It just didn't occur to me. I didn't really know a lot about autism. I knew more. I had been associated with some highly autistic individuals in the past. And so that was my reference point. And so him being autistic just was nowhere in my vernacular at all. I just was not even remotely thinking that. I just thought, oh gosh, he's been through some trauma. Of course, he's having a difficult time right now. But fortunately, I was able to get him into therapy, which I thought was just to manage the trauma. And that's when the diagnosis came out. So he was a little later in life. But that's how that happened.
When you say therapy, what's the process of even researching that? Because I'm sure you're wondering, I just want what's best for my child. And, what resources did you have at the time, and what did all that look like?
Yeah. Well, at the time, I was a professor at the University of Utah. And so that's where I went first, was looking for a child behavioral specialist, child therapist. And initially, again, autism was not even on my radar. So it was just taking him in to see someone at the university who just through connections at the university said, hey, why don't you go try this person? And it was through that, and that therapist spending a little bit of time with him and saying, I'd like to test him for a few things. And I said, great, let's go for it. And sure enough, that's where the autism came out. And I was shocked. Yeah.
So what's next after that?
So I will tell you, initially I was completely shocked. I felt devastated. I was confused. I was scared. Very intense emotions, within that first probably week, maybe even a little bit longer, but just, oh my gosh, what does this mean? At the time I was a single mom. And here I am on my own, this newly diagnosed kid. I don't even know anything about this. What I do know is it's really, really bad, and it's going to be traumatic for him his whole life and all this stuff. And I'm thinking that doesn't make sense. It also just didn't fit my reference point. And so fortunately, being involved with the university, this was a long time ago, before UTBS existed. But at the time, so the university was starting a program. It was kind of an experimental program, I would say. And it was, I want to say, part of just the beginnings of ABA. It wasn't completely ABA. It was just the beginnings. It turned into ABA solely as we went on. But at the beginning, they were trying to figure things out. And, and again, fortunately, because of my position at the university, I was able to get him into that pretty quickly. And it was probably the best decision I made for him going forward, because once I learned more, I did a deep dive into autism. What is this? Give me resources, help me figure this out. What am I supposed to do? And I did a deep dive myself, but then at the university, they were also doing parent classes to help us learn and understand autism, which was super helpful. But the ABA therapy he was getting there ended up being absolutely instrumental in him getting to where he is now in his life.
Yeah. But with all those feelings of fear and uncertainty and all that, what would you have to say to parents who are now having like diagnosis and just...
Yeah, I mean, I would start with your feelings are okay. It's normal, like to experience all that fear, and not just the fear of what does that mean now, but what does it mean for the rest of my kid's life? What does it mean for me? And how am I going to continue to take care of this kid? And then even, at some point, I'm not going to be here anymore. Who's going to take care of them? Like, those are all such normal questions and feelings and emotions. And so I would say, first of all, let yourself feel them. It's okay. It's normal. It's okay. You kind of have to go through that process so you can get to a point when you say, okay, I don't love this, but I can accept this. And I want to figure out how to best help my kid. And the only way you can do that is if you allow yourself to feel those emotions and kind of go through that yourself. It might even be helpful to get your own mental health therapist to help you work through some of those issues or emotions that you might be experiencing as a result of the diagnosis. I think that can be really helpful. I think one of the things that happens to all parents, but especially parents who have kids with special needs, is we always give so much of ourselves to take care of our kids. It's not about me, it's about my kid and doing all these things for your kids, but sometimes we do so at the detriment of ourselves. And that's not helpful for anyone. So taking care of yourself too, and making sure you're getting some help and some support with what your family is now facing going forward.
Yeah. Did you become a mental performance coach before or after the diagnosis?
Oh, long before. Yep. I was a mental performance coach. I'd already been to the Olympics prior to the diagnosis. Wow. So yeah, I'd been a mental performance coach for, let me think, 12 or 13 years prior to the diagnosis, which was so helpful for me.
And that's just what I was about to ask is, you've had the ability to, practice and hone in the skills that you've had for 10 to 12 years. How has all of that helped you through all this?
Oh, tremendously. So my whole career, I've always been patient zero. So I learned something new and I try it on myself to the best of my ability to see, is it just interesting or could it actually work for someone? And so that's actually helped me in circumstances like this when I knew I had to feel my feelings. I had to kind of go through whatever it was that I needed to go through so I could get to the other side and be the best mom for him that I could be. And I used all those skills on myself, the emotional regulation and the self-talk and the stories I was telling myself about why this happened, how this happened, what I was going to do with it going forward. I had to definitely be more deliberate and more intentional in my mindset, again, with the purpose of being the best mom for him that I could be.
With the things you've learned from all that experience, how has that played into your mental performance business? And how do you use all that to help you?
Yeah. Well, I've definitely become more resilient just through the experiences I've had in my life, that being one of them, and learning ways to manage adversity and to regulate my emotions when it's necessary. And trying to think of how I want to say this. All of those experiences have led me to be a better mental performance coach because the more I learn about my own resiliency and how I handle my own adversity, the more I can recognize different struggles in other people and give them strategies that are actually going to be helpful for them, right? You never want to go see someone who's never experienced adversity to help you handle adversity, right? Yeah. I mean, you want people who've kind of been through those things. And I don't necessarily just kind of sit down and tell everybody everything all the time, but when it's relevant, it absolutely helps that person understand where I'm coming from and we can bond a little bit more. I've met a lot of parents over the years who bring their kids to work with me and I find out their other kid is diagnosed with autism or another, difficult thing that they're managing. And I'm able to speak with them from one mom to another and just say, hey, here's what I've learned and things like that. And so I found that those adversities have really helped me just help other people, which ultimately is what I want to do, right? I just want to help people figure out how to do life a little bit better. And if it's not necessarily from a professional perspective, but just one mom to another, I'm there for it. Let's go.
Yeah. At what point did you start seeing hope or start to have those feelings of, hey, like, it's going to be okay. We're going to get through this. What do you have to say about that?
I wouldn't necessarily say there was like a moment in time or once something happened, right? I will say, just because of who I am and my personality, I took maybe a week or two and cried and experienced all the emotions and but then as soon as I was able to get through that, the other side immediately was, all right, we're going to figure this out. We're going to do this. It's going to be okay. And so that was my mindset. And that helped drive me to find the resources that were going to work best for him. It helped drive me to change the way I was parenting him. At the time, I'm not really sure how I would describe my parenting, but it was probably more a little bit disciplinarian, and, you know, you're going to be punished if you don't do, like, these are the rules, you know, that kind of thing. And I realized pretty quickly from doing that deep dive into autism and how their brains work and all those things, that wasn't the right parenting strategy for him. And so I had to shift into asking myself the question of, what does this kid need from me today? Not what do I think is best for him, but what does he need from me? And when I changed that mentality, I kind of changed the way I was parenting. We still had rules. He still had to follow. I mean, that stuff still existed, but I definitely came from a different perspective. And that perspective shift really enhanced our relationships in really good ways. I mean, he was only 8. It's not like we had a bad relationship, right? But it definitely enhanced the way we communicated. I was able to read him better and to better understand what his needs were in different moments, because I took myself out of the equation and just asked every single day, what does this kid need from me right now? What does he need from his mom right now? And can I give him that? Sometimes I couldn't, but can I give him that right now? And it just helped me come from a different place of love and understanding than I was coming from before. And that parenting shift made a pretty big difference as well. But through the ABA therapy, I'll tell you, I mean, just different things along the way, like he started making eye contact. He started walking a little taller. He wasn't always so trying to make himself small. He started saying positive things. He was smiling more often, you know, just little things over time. But as a parent of an autistic child will tell you, that's a big thing, right? It seems small, like, oh my gosh, he made eye contact, or he made a friend. He talked to somebody at school today. Right? It was such a big deal. And so I would say it was these little gradual things over time that have now turned into, he's now 20 years old. He works at UPS loading trucks, has a great job. He is engaged to be married, and he's getting married this September. Mm-hmm. And what I've told people at the town halls is everyone there would be able, when they met him, would know that he was on the spectrum, right? But most people who don't know much about autism would just think he was a little quirky. Right? He just has these little weird body movements. Sometimes he's just a little quirky. Most people would not even know that he's been diagnosed. And I fully credit that to the ABA therapists that he had, to the IEPs in school, to me changing my parenting style, like all of those things coming together to just help this kid thrive. And goodness, there's just no better outcome than that.
Yeah, that's so amazing.
I'm so grateful. I am so grateful to those therapists.
With all that said, how has ABA changed over time? Or when you first started ABA with your son, how does it look to the last time you guys had a session or whatever? What did that look like?
The ABA therapist that my kid, well, he worked with a few over time, but it was not what it is now. And so it was kind of like parents would go in one place and the kids would go to another place, and parents were educated. And then okay, what did you do with my kid? What's going on? And it would just be like, oh, we worked on social skills today. Okay, great. So I don't know, because I really didn't know their therapists that well. Like, that just wasn't how it was set up. Like, you just kind of take your kid and so
was it just something you just accepted and you're like, I hope this is working?
Yeah. But it also, so there was a woman who I worked with at the university who autism was one of her specialties. And she's the one who said, this is where you want to take them. And so I trusted that. I just trusted that, which could have been a problem, but it wasn't. It worked out. Yeah. But it was just because it was the only one in the Utah at the time that was anywhere nearby and us anyway, that was doing any kind of that therapy, even though it wasn't all ABA initially. So
I guess with what you just said of how services have progressed, I'm profoundly deaf myself. I wear cochlear implants on both my side, and I have to go visit an audiologist a couple times every year to retune my hearing, make sure everything is sounding good. Sometimes they'll update it. And from when I was a baby to now how it is now, the services were so different at the time, and the technology it's improved so much. I used to wear a battery pack with a wire that would go all the way here.
Oh wow.
And I had to wear this small vest to hold all my battery packs and stuff.
Yeah.
But now it's amazing how things progress, and I can relate to that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Kind of grateful for those advances, right?
Exactly.
It's nice that you don't have to wear the vest and the battery pack anymore.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, with all of everything you said today, do you have any closing remarks or any advice that you'd like to give to a parent who's 1 week into a diagnosis compared to someone who's 10 years into this? What's one thing you want to leave with our listeners today? I
want to leave a couple things. Can I leave more than one?
Please.
I think some of the biggest things for parents are it's okay to feel what you feel. You can be angry. You can, not like your kid at different times. I mean, all of those emotions are normal as long as you just keep loving your kid through this process. And the other thing that I would say is seek information for sure, but recognize not all information is relevant for your kids. So something I learned pretty quickly in the parenting classes that we were doing while our kids were in the ABA therapy, we were in parenting classes, and we would all talk about what we were feeling and experiencing and little nuances of each of our kids. And I learned so quickly, and all the therapists at the centers know this, that an autism diagnosis is so different for every kid. And so seek information, but then ask yourself, is that relevant for my kid? And it's not all relevant for your kid. I mean, even little things like my kid really liked to be snug, and snug as a bug in a rug when I tucked him in at night. And he liked to wear really tight clothing and pajamas and stuff. And I was the only parent in there. Every other parent was like, oh my gosh, my kid can't stand that. And the sensory on the skin, and they want really baggy, loose clothes. And I was like, okay. And then I started to pay attention and realize there's a lot of differences and nuances and variability. So seek the information, but then ask yourself, does that apply to my kid? And become an expert on your kid, because the more I could give the therapists information about my kid, the better they were with my kid. And so just become an expert on your kid by asking, what does this kid need from me today? What do I think is going to help my kid today? And really listening and paying attention to them. They'll tell you with body language, with facial expressions, they'll tell you if you pay attention.
Yeah. Hey listeners, thank you for listening to Bridging the Gap. For more information or resources about who we are and what we do, please check us out on social media at Utah Behavior Services, or you can go to our website at utahbehaviorservices.com. If you want to get in contact with us, you can email us at bridgingthegap@utbs.co. Thank you, and stay tuned for our upcoming episodes.